are the Jeff Cameron Show, also known as the bonus hour for everybody out there. Thanks for tuning to it. I'm Jeff. That is Tom, of course. You guys are watching on Warchant TV, YouTube. We appreciate you doing that. Chat amongst yourselves. This hour is recorded. It happened just before we went on the air today for the live 2 hours that we did. Things to get done. It's game week. It's a weird week. It's a Friday game, and you know we've got things we got to do. So hence the content, but the lack of live. By the way, so this hour is also where we get into a lot of the times where I place the other items in the sports world that we want to get to. And I watched this last night, Tom, and I don't know, I'm sure you've seen it. First of all, the Lightning win the home opener. It was really nice what they did with the tribute there to all those folks who worked to bring the power back and do all those things. That was the Lightning are second to none in regards to this kind of stuff that they do, and doffing the cap to the people in the community of various kinds. Always really cool. Also, by the way, Kucherov has 4 goals.
Yeah. Well, he scored a hatter in the first game of the series. Well, also Vancouver, British Columbia sent utility workers to help the Tampa Bay area, and that was the opponent. That was the opponent last night. Yeah. So they showed in the second period those folks on the screen, and it was a great job by the broadcast crew because the fans are going nuts while the play's going on. Doesn't make any sense. And they explain that, well, they put them up on the screen, and which is awesome because that is humanity. I'm telling you, it makes me emotional every time that if I'm leaving Tallahassee or I'm driving somewhere on a highway as a storm is coming, like it could just be that I'm going.
You see all those trucks coming in.
Yeah, man, it could be I'm going to the station, and I'm taking I-10 West to go in on a normal work day, but there's something coming to Central Florida, and you just see all the utility trucks from all the different states.
It's awesome. It's
the best of humanity. They're getting paid, but it is such a dangerous thing to do, and it's just the best. It's what we should. It's that kind of energy that we should all be more of.
Yeah, without question. And by the way, not to dismiss or belittle any of that, the real moment of humanity last night happened in Columbus. And if you guys have not seen it, I would invite you to do it. But Columbus honored the late, and this was a tragic story that we never got to, Johnny Gaudreau, number 13, was tragically killed in the offseason while on his bike, of all things. It's ridiculous. The whole thing is ridiculous. But he was honored last night before the game against the Panthers, as you figured they would do. But what they did was, buddy, it got me. I mean, I wasn't prepared. I mean, that took my breath away. Let me set the scene. I know you saw it, but for people at home who didn't, go look this up. They took to the ice minus a man, in particular minus the left winger, which is what he was, and they dropped the puck, and nobody moved for 13 seconds. He was number 13. And it was there wasn't a dry eye in the house, not for either team. Before the game, they had a huge tribute, and you could see the players fighting to keep it together. How they gathered themselves to play that game, that was incredible. But what a touching tribute last night. By the way, the hockey game turned out to be great. 4-3 Panthers win. It was a great game, but that got me, man. I that was really well done, and it's horrible that they had to do that, but if you're gonna do it, that was incredible.
Yeah, they before the game, the ceremony, I saw it all. I saw it all as it was happening, and they're leading in with ESPN coverage. I just didn't. The funny thing was I didn't want to watch SportsCenter, so I put on The Point, which is the 1 hour hockey show. And then they were going to have a game at 7:30 on ESPN, but they went live to the ceremony.
Yeah.
And his wife came out. His 2 kids came out.
That's crazy. That is amazing.
And his infant daughter came out wearing a jersey that said "Daddy," and it was number 13. And then you saw his mom and his dad, they were near center ice, and his parents obviously were having a very difficult time. I can't even imagine standing there. I don't even understand how they could stand there in that moment. But those ceremonies are never easy. Like, could you imagine being somebody who puts that together and like trying to execute that.
Oh yeah.
Of course, the pain for the family is number one, but it's just like you got to put that. It has to be with dignity and taste and humanity. And Columbus pulled it off for what they could. But it's just, I in that moment when they were going through the ceremony, my thought was, I wish the Panthers could just forfeit the game, or they could each take a point and go home. You know what I mean? Just give.
Oh, I think they would have taken that. What I thought, both sides obviously did an amazing job, but you know, the Panthers, as is the case in hockey, as a show of respect, and any sort of moment, it could be for a fight, which is the furthest thing from this moment of honoring one who has passed in their midst, one of their own. But you know, people who aren't familiar with the tradition, players, you know, hit their stick on the ice and make, you know, in unison usually, and it could be, again, as simple as something as a great fight where everybody just slaps their sticks. It could be a great moment. Somebody reaches a milestone in their career, number of goals or assists or something like that, and everybody pays tribute to the effort through the years, and they hit their sticks on the ice. Right after the tribute, after all of that happened, and you could hear it echoing through the arena of the Panthers first hitting their sticks in honor, and then obviously the Blue Jackets players doing that as well. Whew, just that moment where there's not a sound from a fan. It's just the moment of the sticks hitting the ice, echoing throughout the arena. That is, hockey does it well, man. Hockey does it well. They always have. They always have. It could be, I mean, I've seen a number of these. It could be the passing of a legendary player within an organization. It could be some sort of tragic event like this. Unfortunately, there's been too many of these. In hockey, it seems excessive almost, whether it's a player who is killed, a player who dies in a car crash, a player, you know, there's been a lot of tragedy in the NHL. It's amazing. It's not to say that these things don't happen in other sports. They do. It's the real world. It's true of any workplace, but I just feel like I remember more of these happening to young hockey players than I do in other sports. That's anecdotal. I don't know that that's accurate. It feels that way, though.
Columbus has a terrible moment earlier in its franchise history. Very early, after it was an expansion team, was a player named Espen Knudsen. Fired a shot that was deflected into the stands and killed a spectator, killed a young child spectator. So Columbus has had to do things like this, unfortunately, a couple of times, and they haven't been around that very long.
No.
But it's yeah, you're right. It's funny, and not in the sense of haha. When they were cutting to the ceremony, I thought, do I change the channel?
Right, right. Because, I mean, if your humanity is, I mean, you're going to get wrapped up in that. And that story was insane.
I mean, it's him and his brother. His brother was lost as well. It was in Jersey.
They're just on a bike ride, and I think it was a drunk driver just ran him over in the middle of the afternoon.
Right. And he ended up going to Ohio to play because he wanted to be closer to home, to his family. Like, there are a lot of humans out there that lose their lives every day, but when you lose a good one, when you lose one, nobody can say a bad word about.
Oh no, everybody talks about him as a sterling human being,
and that's when it hits home very hard for people like you and me, man. Johnny Hockey, whatever. I always thought he was overrated on the West Coast, and I finally got to see him play. I was like, oh, he's got a little something.
He's pretty good.
Johnny Hockey. I think it was Manziel fatigue that was giving me like, what is he, like Johnny Manziel of hockey? Right. Then he must be overrated. But when you have nobody can find anything but like the most effusive of praise. It's like anything that happens in our life, when somebody that's really good or generous or giving or full of heart leaves us, the weight is felt all the more. And you can tell that's what's lost now. That's the void that they have in Columbus and the hockey family.
While that was going on, and to switch gears here entirely, I have to tell you, I laughed my ass off at something, and this is trivial by way of comparison, of course. But there's nothing like a team. So there's 3 games last night. I said before we went off the air yesterday that there were 3 college football games. This is all part of the really bad football that you get on Tuesday nights and Wednesday nights. This is like the matchups are awful, and you're just kind of This really puts to the test how much do I love football when I have options, which obviously last night you had playoff baseball, you had the hockey of which we're referring, and, really anything else could have kept you from tuning in to Kennesaw State and Middle Tennessee State, although you did get a barn burner of an two overtime game in one of the others in New Mexico State. But the point is, this is all part of that 55 straight days of football being on. And I do catch myself, sometimes for betting purposes, tuning in to said games where the matchups aren't great, if I can find an angle. I didn't have one last night, but I did because I'm a degenerate. Check the line. And I have to tell you, Tom, I don't remember a time. We may have had a first last night. I don't remember a team ever covering a spread in which they scored a grand total of 5 points. But it happened last night. Kennesaw State lost, for those of you who didn't waste your time and tune into that game. Kennesaw State lost to Middle Tennessee State 14-5. They were getting 10. They covered the spread while scoring 5 effing points.
That's funny. So back in the day when Berman was kind of new and doing the Swami, like it was actually a fun feature. I would always laugh because he would have weird scores. Like he would put just weird because it didn't matter. It was about the cover. It wasn't about the final score.
Yeah,
but
he had like 25-19. You're like, what?
Right.
Yeah.
Right, exactly. Now he would put 14-5. You know what I mean? 1980s Chris Berman would put 14-5 as a score, but I had no idea until I had no idea that happened, and it was 10. Of course, it was. Yes. That's fantastic.
Vegas is good. Vegas is good even when it's Middle Tennessee State and Kennesaw. Kennesaw State. Sorry, Kennesaw. Yes, and don't you have a family member that goes to Kennesaw State?
I do. My niece goes there. Yeah.
No, it's good.
I hope she did something else. She's more into the arts, so hopefully she was doing something in the theater and not watching that game last night.
Probably. I would think. I don't know that there's a rabid following for Kennesaw State football just yet, but they did take a step up in competition. So the program has actually been very good in its infancy
because of hoops.
Yeah. So, but anyhow, they got beat last night. They scored 5 points and they lost 14-5, but that's a cover. That is a cover, just like it would have been if it was 24-14. So, or 24-15 or whatever. Yeah, no, that was nuts to have that happen. I think it was actually 10.5. So yeah, but I was cracking up. I was like, man, if I lost that cover and the team that I bet on only gave up 5 effing points and I couldn't cover, I think I would have been more incensed about that kind of a not cover than if it's, 39-30.
Yeah. Oh, yes. There's a Middle Tennessee lifer out there who woke up this morning furious, and he was extra short with his children and his wife because they couldn't score 17 measly points.
There were trades yesterday in the National Football League, and I'm really here for this trend that is happening over the last couple of years. And it's really, Tom, frankly, if you analyze it in my mind properly, it's just the NFL catching up to baseball, catching up to hockey, catching up to basketball, catching up to all the other sports, which frequently have action that betters a team before the trade deadline. By the way, you don't have to wait to the day of the trade deadline, and we're a good bit away from the trade deadline, at least in terms of days in the NFL. You can call a team and say, look, you've got a player. You're not going anywhere. We think we are going somewhere. You need more draft picks because your organization is a mess. We feel like we're this close to winning it all. We'll give you the draft picks that you desire, but we need the player. So why don't we make a deal? And that's exactly what happened yesterday in the NFL, because it happened twice. And if you go and look at the Bills, really smart move by Buffalo, who's I think you can say they're already going to win the East, obviously in the AFC. They're 2 full games up on the Jets now, and a game and a half up on Miami, who's a mess. And they've already beaten both those teams in their stadiums. So that's a wash, baby. Buffalo's already won the division. You call it a day. They should start printing up the damn shirts for those people in Buffalo. Josh Allen and the Bills have won the division yet again. But the point is, if you're somebody like Detroit or you're somebody like Buffalo, you're not there to win the division. You're there to win the Super Bowl. You have been knocking on the door of the Super Bowl. So, like, Detroit should maybe call the Jets and see if they can get Hassan Reddick, because Hassan Reddick is sitting out and Detroit just lost Aiden Hutchinson, right? So you need a defensive end. Like, make that move. Make that go get somebody.
Well, the problem is the Jets just went all in yesterday. That was the other move, because they know that their window is very, very short. It lasts as long as Aaron Rodgers cares to play football, which who knows? Every 10 minutes it might change.
Yeah, so they went and got Devontae Adams from the Raiders.
Right. And apparently Reddick's agent, he changed his agent, and the new one wants to reconcile with the Jets. So who the hell knows? Maybe that was part of the Salah stuff. I don't know.
That story, by the way, is a mess. Reddick has ruined his career. If you look long term, he's ruined his career. Oh, yeah, it's crazy. Anyhow, I don't want to go through all that. Guys, read that story. He's an idiot. And that's nuts what happened there. But that said, that deal for Devontae Adams is a good one for the Jets. He reunites with Aaron Rodgers and whatever. We'll see what happens. I think they're dead in the water already, but it's a good move. Amari Cooper getting picked up by Buffalo for a third-round pick and a future seventh.
Yeah.
That is pennies. That's nothing. That's the right play. Amari Cooper is instantly the best wide receiver on the Buffalo Bills. And believe me, I like Keon Coleman as much as the next guy, but he can't get separation. That is a brilliant move.
I really don't understand why NFL general managers cling to top 100 picks, like outside of the first rounds.
Agreed.
Pick 62. Like, because you anticipate you're going to be successful in a given year if you're in this situation. So you ain't picking 33rd. You're not picking 35th. You're picking closer to 65th. So at that point, I get it. You need these players to keep yourself under the cap, and it makes the whole world go round, especially if you can find a starter around pick 50.
Yeah.
But man, that guy's not going to help you for 2 or 3 years. And if you've got a window, spend. You have to. You've got to go for it. I mean, there are tons of recent examples in NFL history where you go all in. Our franchise is one of them. The Rams are another one. I mean, so there was a long, history of the NFL where Montana to the Chiefs, it'll never work. Man, no, you've got to push all the chips. You don't just get Brady, you get Gronk, you get Antonio Brown, you get Ndamukong Suh. You bring in all these pieces to make it happen in the end. And that's what I would think that they need to do here in this particular situation.
Well, and Major League Baseball does it all the time. Like, it's really smart. When you watch Major League Baseball, go back to, it's dated now, but when you go to the Marlins last championship, they had a really good team. They had quality pitching, and they were like, what do we need? Well, we need a veteran catcher. All right, let's go get Pudge. Let's go get somebody. They did something like that. Like, you've got this little hole to fill if all the other pieces are solid.
Right.
And if you're Buffalo, you've been knocking on the door. You're really, really close. You lost your superstar wide receiver, but he's a diva, and you were tired of him, and he was tired of you, so you moved on. But early on this year, you recognize you don't have anybody that challenges anybody over the top, which is a real problem because you have a quarterback who has the best arm in the National Football League.
Yeah.
So you want to be able to stretch the field. You can't take that element out of what you are. And, this is an easy win-win.
Yeah, so the best chance you have of landing and making an NFL draft pick turn into a star for you is interior offensive line, typically, like center specifically, first round pick, and it's still 60-40 at best. It's just a little under 60-40 at best. So you tell me, if you got the cap room, would you rather have a coin flip? Or would you rather have a dude that has been a multi-year all-pro player, Pro Bowl level player that can help you right now? I'm not saying never draft. You have to, because that's the way the cap works. You can't build teams like they did in the 90s with the 49ers and the Cowboys. But, if you're in this position, Go for it. Absolutely go for it. And the Jets need to. They got to double down. They made their deal with the devil, so they have to double down in this situation. It makes perfectly logical sense. They could both flame out. Cooper could not fit for whatever reason, and the Jets might win 6 games, and it's still the right move here today that they made.
Because all you gave up was a third rounder who's not even guaranteed to impact your team anyhow. I mean, like if you look at those picks.
Yes.
I mean, you've got, listen, one of the guys, and if you're thinking about Davante Adams, he's a borderline Hall of Famer if you look at his numbers at this track in his career.
So he and Mike Evans are on the same track.
Yes.
If you're looking at yardage, 10 years of service in the NFL, like they're basically, tit for tat in terms
if you told any GM or coach, hey man, with pick number 61 next year, we're going to take a kid out of Montana who's a pretty fast wide receiver. We like his upside. We feel pretty good about him. We think he'll come in here and contribute right away, maybe on special teams, and then we'll see if we can get him in the rotation over the next couple of years as a guy. But we like him. Okay. And in door number 2, we've got Davante Adams. Oh, you don't say. We've got Davante Adams.
Right.
He's healthy. He's in shape. Yes, to both. I think I'm going to take Davante Adams out of the kid over the kid from Montana that we get in the 3rd round with pick 60.
Wait a minute. What about that hamstring that's been holding him out of those Raiders games? Is he healthy? Do we need to do a medical workup on him?
But it's like even Amari Cooper, the Bills traded for Amari Cooper for a 3rd and future 7th. They got a 6th back in return.
Yeah.
Really, it was basically for a 3rd round pick. Right. And the problem with, of course, Cooper is buried in Cleveland with a quarterback who can't play. So that's fine. He also drops the ball too often, but I have a feeling the drops will lessen when he's at a place where he thinks he can win.
Yeah. Did you realize that they hadn't scored 20 points yet?
Yeah, I did.
Cleveland hasn't scored 20 points in the game.
Okay, so let's take a quick break because this is an interesting subject matter too, and I don't know why a coach wouldn't do what I'm about to suggest. It's Jeff Cameron Show, 93.3 Real Talk Radio, Warchant TV. So we were talking a moment ago, Tom, about the NFL and the trades and why teams should do this, and they reached out to Cleveland and made a trade, and I thought it was a good trade, and oh, by the way, what I didn't mention was that Cam Akers was the Vikings reacquired Cam Akers and gave the Texans a 6th round pick. He was buried on the depth chart in Houston, so now he goes to Minnesota. You could argue you go from good to good.
Yeah, no, in that situation, that's an offensive coach, head coach, who was your coordinator with the Rams. Like the beef was clearly with McVay, not with O'Connell. What the hell is his name?
Yeah.
It clearly was with McVay because now Minnesota has acquired him 2 different times, and now he's been with the same coach 3 times in his career. So last year he was going to be something pretty good for them, and then was it the Achilles? I mean,
he's had so many injuries. I feel bad for him. Every time he started to get something going, he's had an injury, and yes, he had an Achilles. It was also the quickest turnaround in the history of Achilles ruptures when he came back the following year off of that. And actually played. I mean, did he not play like after missing only a total of like 9 months for rehab after an Achilles? I think that's crazy.
Is something like that. One of the more snake bit careers in history
of all time. Florida State onto the pros, all of it.
And, you could have run Wildcat with that dude. We never did. He was a good high school quarterback. He was legendary in his state. Now, he's making a good living, but he could have made a living, like a humongous one. And I just feel bad for him.
Yeah, he's made money. It's a testament to his overall physicality and athleticism that despite being in bad situations and or coming off of injury, that he's still in the league. It's not been that long a career, but it's long enough that if you've lasted this long, you've got something to you that people can't walk away from.
Yeah.
Clearly, they're like, really? So wait a minute. He couldn't get along with a head coach somehow. He's had an Achilles injury, but we should reacquire him? There has to be something there.
Well, and again, O'Connell was the assistant on that staff. So clearly, you have an underling who said, I don't know what the hell this guy's problem is. I love Cam Akers.
Yeah. Well, he was never a problem here. He just always was in a really tough situation. Obviously, the team wasn't any good.
the moment in his first spring game when he and Derwin James go full speed at each other. It's a neutral fight. It's a new. You think, oh my God, this kid could be something.
Got a little something to him.
And then we failed him. We failed a lot of kids over the last 10 years, haven't we?
Buddy, we have failed the fans at Florida State over the last number of years. Outside of a crazy adrenaline spike here and there where out of nowhere you're on the cusp of winning a national title, we have really pretty much been average or below. That's what we've been for a long period of time. There is no Ohio State-like consistency at Florida State. There's none of that. No, none.
Of course not. Of course not. Ohio State, my entire adult life is safer. We did the math on it. Like 2 years, like 2 years and 25 they've been, kind of average. 2 years and 30 that they've been.
I wanted to go back to the subject of the Browns. So I've been watching this story because I've been laughing at Deshaun Watson's situation, and I've talked about that insane contract that they gave him and all that guaranteed money. And I mentioned that the front office, and I had to word this delicately, and I've tried to word this delicately, and I there's just no good way to say it because it makes you come across as evil in a weird way. Nobody is ever rooting for somebody to be sexually assaulted. Of course not. But when the latest accusations occurred with the new accuser, this new woman who says that Deshaun, and she gave specific details that we won't get into, but when she says that she went on a date with Deshaun Watson, he sexually assaulted her, that at the time is what I said would be an out for the Cleveland Browns for cause to not have to pay that contract to Deshaun Watson. And that's all I'm saying. That it's just a statement of fact that if there is anything to those accusations, and if at any point he is charged with that, the Browns would get out from under, just a statement of fact, would get out from under the worst contract in NFL history. And they would be able to move on. So maybe I shouldn't use the word root, but if it happens, they're going to act quickly because he can't play. And this is where it gets crass because you're talking about a guy's playing ability and then these very serious accusations over here. I get it. We're all adults. We're having a conversation here. I know how serious those accusations are. Back to the football part of this for a second. Nothing has happened in that case that has been an impetus for the Browns to be able to get out from the contract. And nothing has happened in the case where they could reasonably sit him while the NFL investigates. So what management has done in Cleveland is continue to force Kevin Stefanski's hand and make him play Deshaun Watson. Now, to Tom's point, the Deshaun Watson-led Cleveland Browns are incompetent. They cannot score. If you watch, I bet against Cleveland every week. They're awful. This is an awful offense, a terrible team. Okay, and every week after the game, after another terrible performance, Kevin Stefanski has to go to the dais, and he gets asked about whether or not, and the reason I pay attention to this is, A, I find it fascinating, and B, Jameis Winston is the backup. So when they ask him over and over again, is he thinking about making a move to Jameis Winston, who is the backup, who has started in this league, who made a Pro Bowl, who threw for 5,000 yards, let's not act like he doesn't have ability. He'll throw you a pick, but he'll also throw you a gazillion touchdowns. And he's fun to watch. And he's a hell of a lot better than Deshaun Watson, period. He just is. Now, he wasn't. Deshaun was borderline the best quarterback in the league when he was in Houston. But that guy doesn't exist anymore. And clearly the toll taken by these charges and the off-the-field stuff has created a very different version of that player we saw in Houston. He doesn't exist anymore. He's beaten down. He's been injured, emotionally, physically. I don't feel sorry for him. It's what it is, but that is clearly the case. Anyhow, Stefanski gets asked about it every week. And every week he says, no, we're not thinking about making a change. We feel like Deshaun gives us the best chance to win. And you know and I know that he does not believe that he is being told that because of that contract, they are going to continue to ride this out and play him. Now, as I recall, Kevin Stefanski has won not one but two NFL Coach of the Year awards. And so, in fact, before we did this segment today, I looked it up because I remember one of them. He left Minnesota, as you recall, and became the head coach of the Cleveland Browns after he had been the offensive coordinator for 13 years in Minnesota, where they had a good offense. He goes to Cleveland, and in 2020, 2022, 2020, he takes them right off the bat to their first playoff appearance since 2002. In 2020, right off the bat, he won NFL Coach of the Year that year. So that made sense. He led the Browns to a second playoff appearance in 2023, and he won a second NFL Coach of the Year award for his work. Okay, that is a very long-winded way of saying, why doesn't Kevin Stefanski walk into the owner's office or the GM's office and say, I'm starting Jameis Winston on Sunday, and if you'd like to fire me, please do. I'm 42 years old. I've won 2 NFL Coach of the Year honors. I'll get a job. You can go to hell. I'm not going to continue to roll Deshaun Watson out there because you dumbasses signed him to the dumbest contract in the history of the league. Why doesn't he do it? I would do it. I think most of us would do it. Like, it's a principled stand to take. But moreover, isn't it the right thing to do when you know you're about to lose the players?
Yeah, it could be. Or it could be that he was in on it and he was pushing very hard for the Watson move. You know, sometimes guys are stubborn in that situation. I don't know the dynamics of who made the choice and who gave the green light. I would imagine he was consulted, if not heavily involved in the decision making. And so therefore the approach might be, hey man, you guys are tied to the hip one way or the other. And I agree with you. You have a locker room that you have a responsibility to when a player isn't living up to his ability.
You got to play the best players. You lose players when you don't play the best players. They go to practice. They're in the games. They know. They watch the films.
Yeah, they've got an interesting situation on their hands, too, because their running back, I think it's Jerome Ford, he's averaging about 5 yards a carry. They're about to get Nick Chubb back, but they just jettisoned Cooper. And they've got Deshaun here, who doesn't lead them to any semblance of any consistency. They're the only team in the NFL that has not broken the 20-point barrier, where, as you've pointed out, it's over central in the league the last couple of weeks. You know, you could forgive somebody for scoring 17 in weeks 1 and 2 in the NFL these days with the way the preseason structure is, but we're through 6 games now, and they have not broken 20 points in a week. They're like us. They're the equivalent of us in terms of professional offense.
And we were claiming Mike was guilty of coaching malpractice when he wouldn't bench DJ.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Man, I'm stunned by all this. It's fun. It's a soap opera. I mean, you had this yesterday, and then you had the Jerry Jones situation yesterday, which, by the way, had to be those talk show hosts' dream. For those that don't know, Jerry loves to hear himself talk every week, so he makes sure he has a guest appearance once a week on a local talk show in Dallas, and those two guys get to pepper him with questions. Sometimes he even takes callers, which is insane, and that just tells you who he is. Egomaniac, megalomaniacal. He's out here answering questions from fans. It's crazy. But anyhow, this is him. And yesterday, he got pissed off at these two hosts because they asked him about his offseason moves and preparation for this upcoming season. And in addition to asking him, because the season is awry, clearly, they're not any good. Every time they play at home, they get boat raced. I mean, their games aren't close. They're steady. The only reason the Baltimore game was close was that Dallas was losing by 20-some-odd points in the second half, and they were just going through the motions, and Dallas scored 3 late touchdowns and made it look like a close game. Other than that, they would have lost every home game by a gazillion. I mean, Detroit was clowning them. I talked about that on Monday or Tuesday or whatever it was we talked about. It might have been Monday. They had backups in there running passes for linemen. They're like, this is hilarious. They're running flea flickers up by 30. Like, that was personal. That was a personal ass whooping.
It was personal because of the NFL officials the year prior. The first play that they ran from scrimmage, they had a lineman report as eligible. Like,
yes, I love that, by the way. If that's my coach, I love that dude. He's like, get you some. We don't forget.
The problem is Director Ben Spicer of the Warchant family is a Detroit fan and lifer. They don't believe he can win the big one because of the risks he takes that make them fall in love with him. So he'll get to a place where, hey, man, he's on the precipice and he's going to do something crazy like a fake punt. It's going to blow up in their face and they're going to lose. So they've got an absolute love, but there's a limitation. They feel like there's a ceiling with him because he is so reckless and fun.
but he's awesome.
But he is awesome. He is awesome.
He is awesome. And I would want to play for him. And he would also make you play for him if you were on his team, because that dude could whoop your ass to this day. I mean, he's massive. He still looks like he starts in the league.
He'd snatch your arm and you'd be like, whoa.
Dude's got a little something to him. Yeah, I mean, it's hilarious.
You're like when Dad grabbed your arm when you were 6, you're like, ooh.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Dad's got a little something to him here.
I guess I can't open this lollipop right now, but I put it back in my pocket. He was serious.
My favorite part is that yesterday they're asking Jerry about this stuff and his offseason moves that haven't panned out, and they're steady getting housed. And these fans are mad about it, and these hosts are mad about it. So they ask him a bunch of questions, and in the middle of it, Jerry interrupts. He's tired of being peppered with negativity. So he says, and I'm quoting now, "This is not your job. Your job isn't to let me go over all the reasons that I chose to do something. I'm sorry, and then say sorry that I did it. That's not your job. I'll get somebody else in here to ask these questions, man." So he just threatened their jobs. If you must know, the hosts are Sean Sharif and RJ Choppy. That's their names. And Jerry was talking to them from the league meetings in Atlanta. And he went on to say, "I'm not kidding. You're not going to figure it out with the team, what the team is doing right or wrong. If you are, or any 5 or 10 of you that are like you need to come to this meeting that I'm going to today with 32 teams here. You geniuses. You really think you're going to sit here with a microphone and tell me all the things that I've done wrong and without ever going over the rights? Listen, we both know we're talking to a lot of great fans and a lot of great listeners. And I'm very sorry for what happened out there on Sunday. I'm sick about what happened out there on Sunday. But you're not going to sit here and question me."
Yes, I am.
Yeah, it's kind of my job.
It's what I'm doing right now. So no future tense needed. In the present, I'm doing that right now, Jerry.
I am asking you these questions as we speak, Jerry. Yeah. Now, I'll be honest with you. That's a toughie for all involved, because let's not pretend Jerry doesn't wield a huge amount of authority in this situation, because my guess is this, Tom.
I'm not saying he cut his brake lines, but
I'm not talking about that kind of authority. I'm saying,
but if I wanted to, I have that kind of authority.
It is my guess, Tom, that station that carries the Dallas Cowboys in Dallas, the FM blowtorch that they work for,
you're right.
Yeah, it has a contract, and a lucrative one at that. And so my second guess is that if Jerry got too angry, that contract could go elsewhere. And that's where, if you and I are the hosts and the program director wants to have a chat with us after the show, it's probably a tense conversation, because guess what? Both parties, meaning the program director and the hosts, are right. That's a hard conversation.
Sure.
The hardest of conversations.
Well, but at that point, if you're the host, you got a choice to make, because if you double down and you're Sharif and Choppy, then you've got to go and say what you need to say, and either you go to the counter program station afterwards, because now your profile is raised.
Oh yeah.
Or you go to like a place like the DMV area or New York or Philly, and you're the cowboy hater. You're the hero that comes home. I told it like it was. I'll tell it like it is. Sharif in the afternoons, 3 to 6.
Yeah, it's a tough deal though, man, because I remember I got in trouble for ripping the Tallahassee Tiger Sharks for not paying their bills. And I said it, and listen, I miss the Tallahassee Tiger Sharks. I wish they were still here. It's awful what happened. But anyhow, I went off the handle and ripped them. And I did it in an email to somebody, and that person, piece of garbage, forwarded my email to the Tallahassee Tiger Sharks, who had a contract with 1270. And one, they weren't paying their bills on. But anyhow, they had a contract, and they they sent it to so the Tiger Sharks got it and they sent it to my GM, who was a very nice man. And he was irate. He was irate because he correctly pointed out it's not my job to worry about whether or not they pay their bills on time. It's certainly not my job to publicly out them for not doing so when they have a contract with us. And I was called into his office.
But you had integrity there. Maybe you didn't have to call them deadbeats in an email that you wrote back, but you know.
I did. It was a tough time. You know, one of the worst parts about that. So I got suspended, and I'll never forget. I give John credit, the GM at the time, John Hunt. I give him credit. He suspended me. He shut the door. Enough time's gone by that I can tell this story. He shut the door and he's like, "Did you send this email?" And he shows me the email. He knows damn well it's time-stamped 4:50 in the morning. I was doing mornings. And it's 4:50 in the morning. I'm the only person in the building. And so he goes, "Did you send this email?" To a Miss, whatever her name was. And I said, I did. He's like, "You think that was wise?" And I was like, "Well," and I said to him, "Clearly you don't." And he then,
Whoa.
"Well, yeah, I mean, what are we dancing around for? I'm not going to grovel."
Boy,
so then
we're getting close to quarters. That I don't know who took your quarters kind of thing.
So then he reads it aloud to me and then says, "None of this is under your purview. None of this that you're talking about here, and certainly not with our listeners." And, and all this. And I'm like, okay. And then he goes, "We got a problem because I've been contacted by the Tiger Sharks president and he's read this email and now I've got to act." And so I just sat there and I knew I was in trouble. And he basically just said, "I'm probably going to have to suspend you. We'll talk later this afternoon." And so I was like, all right. So I waited all day. He brought me back in and then he shut the door again. And he said, "I'm going to suspend you for a week. I'm going to tell everybody it's without pay, but I'm going to pay you." Which was really, really cool.
Yeah.
And he did that. He goes, "But here's the kicker. I want you to get in your car and drive over there right now and apologize to the president." I was like, oh, that was worse than the suspension. I was like,
that's an outstanding punishment. That is an outstanding punishment.
So I got in my car and I drove over to the Civic Center. I had to go in their front office. I know all those people. I'd been part of a promotion there. I knew all these. Yeah. How you doing, Mary? Good to see you, Mike. Yeah. Oh, yes. Buddy. Mm-hmm. It was awful. And I got marched into the president's office. It was humiliating. I'm like, "Sir, how are you?" It's like, "Oh, I'm well, Jeff. Well, what can I do for you?" And he knew why I was there. And so anyhow, yeah.
"You need $50 to pay the light bill?"
So I know what it's like to be in those moments and to be in the wrong. And those guys aren't in the wrong there, but it could be reminded, they could be reminded that that's a lucrative contract we have with the Cowboys and Jerry Jones.
Well, so the decision is the decision there. So when keeping it real goes wrong, or you have to back down. But you could, in that moment, you could choose to say, "Oh, I'm sorry. I thought we were having an honest conversation, Jerry. If you don't want to have that, then certainly we go to Jim in San Antonio. Jim, go ahead. You're on with Jerry." And see what happens.
That's probably what you would have to do in that situation because you can't get into a fight with him.
Right.
And that isn't your job in that moment. So that would be tough. You're kind of like, okay, I think that's a wrap, Jerry. Enjoy the meetings in Atlanta. We'll talk to you next week. And then talk to him off the air,
Yeah.
We got like 30 seconds when we come back. Jeff Cambridge, 93.3 Real Talk Radio, Warchant TV. How's the stomach, Tom? At this point of the show, you're 4 hours away.
Yeah.
We got first pitch. We've got, for those that don't know, obviously, a little Walker Buehler. Go ahead.
Trapper keeper.
Thank you. Luis Severino for the Mets tonight, 8:08 on FS1, if you will. And it's game 3. We got a pivotal game 3 on our hands here, guys. Walker Buehler in the postseason, a little 0-1 with a 10-8-0, got lit up. And Severino's been okay. So what do we do here? What do we say?
Well, there's a lot of time. The other day when the first pitch was minutes after the show was over, that was a little bit tougher. This one feels like a pivotal game. Game 1, even if we won it,
Yeah,
and we
whatever,
got smoked. I mean, that's great. You got your split. You get greedy with game 2, but it doesn't vest unless you win game 2 in Los Angeles, because they've got the better roster over the long haul. So you got to ambush them here. I need Sevy to throw a clean first inning, and with Severino typically pretty early in games how he's going to be. They're a better ball club. They are, and I know it. I'm not delusional. The Dodgers have a better roster, better team. But we're playing together, and we fight, man. I'm just so proud of this group. Every time I watch them, I'm not trying to be a PR firm. Like, I just love this group. I hope the ride continues for another 2-3 weeks. This has just been friggin' magical.
Dodgers minus a 1.5 tonight against the Mets. I'll take that plus 1.5. Although, if you like the Mets to win outright, you get them at minus 105, which is a hell of a lot better than the 190 you got to have if you want to take them. Yeah.
We're a favorite tonight. We're a betting favorite. That's interesting.
Yeah, so it's and then the Dodgers minus 1.5 and the winner minus 115 if you take the Dodgers.
Okay, got it.
So it's yeah. Now, if you want to have fun with it, you can do what I do, which is bet the first 5 a lot of times in any of the player props. If the pitching player props interest you really quickly, Severino over under, Tom, 4.5 strikeouts.
He's not a strikeout guy. I'm going to go under on that one.
All right, Walker Buehler over 4.5 strikeouts. If you say over, he's also not a strikeout guy as he's currently constructed.
No, I don't know that he pitches long enough. This is where I think we might ambush him. I think that might be coming tonight.
You can get the over on 4.5 strikeouts at plus 115 if you wanted to do it that way. Yeah. And you can, have some fun with all this if you want. Brandon Nimmo, does he hit a single tonight? You can get a yes at plus 475, Tom.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, you got to wait. Now, we'll know by this time because we're taping, but he's got a bad foot. I wonder if he's going to play tonight. So we'll see.
Maybe that's why that's there. Yeah, I don't know. But the player props are fun, man. They're a lot of fun in baseball. You can go through all this. And by the way, unfortunately, last night for you Yankee fans, I know you're celebrating. Everybody else, we can cry because because Aaron Judge woke up finally and 3 RBIs, including a 2-run homer. He's been useless in the entire postseason, and now all of a sudden he's alert, which is a problem. Good work out of you, sir. Good luck tonight. Go Mets. I'm there for you. And to everybody else, as usual, thank you. Till tomorrow. Peace.